Welcome to Hockey Night in New York, where Islanders hockey always reigns supreme. Whether you were raised at the barn in Uniondale or born in the stable at Belmont, Hockey Night in New York is your home for all things Isles. Now, let's drop the puck and get this party started.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is Hockey Night in New York. Welcome to the program and Happy New Year, everyone. It is Sunday, January 7th, 2024, coming at you live from Florida Media in Rockville Center. Got another spectacular show coming up for you tonight. We always use nice positive verbs for that. With me, as always, is Mr. Stefen Rosner, and joining us tonight, Maple Leafs beef writer David Alter will be joining us from the Hockey News to talk a little Leafs, since the Isles will be playing them a little later in the week. Stefen Rosner, how do you do?
Viva Las Vegas.
How was that, buddy?
Viva Las Vegas. It was fantastic.
You had a nice
time? By the way, I think it's adjectives, not verbs. But, grammar.
Oh, my God, you're right.
Right? Yeah.
I quit.
No.
I'm done.
No.
It is an adjective.
Yes.
Good God.
Here we are.
God. Well, thank you.
No worries. It was great. 6 a.m. flight this morning. Couple hours to just relax, and then let's talk some hockey.
Let's talk some hockey, but before we do, I want to thank all of our wonderful sponsors, starting with Blue Line Deli and Bagels, located at 719 West Jericho Turnpike in Huntington and 217 Carlton Avenue in East Islip. Satisfy your hunger at Blue Line Deli and Bagels. Check out the menu at BlueLineDeli.com. Also, a big thanks to Main Street Board Game Cafe, located at 307 Main Street in Huntington Village. Check them out at MainSTBoardGameCafe.com. Also, a big thanks to Razor and Kniff, attorneys at law, ready to fight for you. Check them out at RazorandKniff.com, RAISERANDKENNIFF.com for a free consultation. So, with that out of the way, Stefen, 1-1-1 week, 1-2-1 road trip for the Islanders, a little less than stellar, so I guess we can start talking about that. Obviously, we weren't able to talk about the week previous because we were off last week for the holiday, but the beginning of the road trip started with that 3-1 loss to the Pittsburgh Penguins, and then we get into next week, but we can briefly touch on that Penguins game just to start the road trip off. What did you see there?
Wasn't great. I don't think it was lack of effort, and obviously it was better than the 7-0 shellacking they had earlier, but again, it's just starts right off the bat. That first goal that goes in when Romanov slides and it's Eller that scores, it's not how you want to start a game. Again, not a great play by Romanov, who, again, leaves his feet a little too often, especially on that goal, if you guys remember, that guy had no angle to shoot. If it's shooting, it's a sharp angle shot. Sorokin was on his goal line too, which didn't help the cause. But anytime you allow Eller to score 2 goals in a game, no offense, but
the Islanders have a tendency to let guys who aren't really supposed to score goals. That's kind of their MO.
Yeah, and again, just wasn't a great game. They weren't in sync completely. A game they could have won, for sure.
Sure, yeah.
Samuel Bolduc scores his first goal of the season, right?
Right.
But again, they come up short. And again, we looked at that game against Capitals as a bounce back. But we talked about it that, okay, it's great that you did that, but now you got to build on it. And they didn't do that. And they go out and it was going to get tough. The road trip was going to be tough. Colorado's a really good team. Arizona's a wild card team. And Vegas is Vegas, even though if they're struggling. So that was kind of the game you wanted to have. But there were more games to be had, and it was still a chance to have a good road trip, and then we could get to that part of the road trip.
Yeah. So we'll start with the Colorado game. I mean, this is basically what's become now a cliche, quintessential 2023-24 New York Islanders game where they have a lead, a multi-goal lead, except they just gave up the lead a little earlier this time. They're up 3-1 in the second period. Colorado comes back. They ultimately end up going to overtime later on, and unfortunately the Islanders could not get the second point, which has also been a little more common than you'd like if you're an Islander fan. But if you want to look at the bright side here, it's another top team in this league. The Islanders were able to run up some goals on. They just weren't able to keep pucks out of the net, and they come up empty-handed on the second point. But it's a positive way to start the trip because you say, okay, they stole one in Colorado. They went in there, they took one, and you look at the rest of the week and say, okay, this could end up being a decent road trip depending on how the rest of the games go. But talk about that Colorado game.
Yeah, again, they had a 2-1 lead, 3-1 lead, 4-3 lead. Engvall gets his first goal in a month? 10 games? No,
Right.
I think it was a month. Yeah. And that came right after he was benched.
Yep.
So that was important. Simon Holmstrom shot a puck at 5-on-5. Scored it.
Also positive, yeah.
And again, I didn't think Georgiev was good at all, and I think the Islanders exploited it. The problem was, again, the defense and the penalties. And then we have to get to it. Listen, if you blame penalties or missed calls for losses, I completely disagree with that because good teams find a way to overcome that. The Islanders did get screwed. a couple of times. That being
Well, that's
said,
the thing.
you still got to kill it. But
you can comment on the officiating, of course. If the officials make a bad call, which they're going to do,
Yep.
they do it essentially every game. They're not going to see every call, or they're not going to see every call the way you're seeing it on your telecast, right? Especially on the slow motion instant replay. But I stop short of saying, okay, the referees are essentially the reason why the Islanders are lost, or beyond that, when you get the conspiracy theories coming up. Like I see that on social media saying, the league has it out for the Islanders, or they're trying to give the Avs or whoever they're playing a win. I stop short of that, and it's a little much. But look, again, the refs are going to shortchange every now and then. Is it intentional? Probably not, but it's going to happen every now and then.
And if the Islanders' penalty kill was as good as it was last year, it's not going to matter. I think the biggest issue is that Mike Riley interference call at the blue line where they call it.
Yeah.
And you watch the replay, and it looks just like incidental contact. And what kills the Islanders is that they don't kill that off. And then in the dying seconds of the third, Nichushkin gets it all alone, and Mayfield takes a hold.
It changes everything.
It changes everything in that game. Now, again, when that happens, your penalties got to come up clutch. Again, good teams find a way to overcome the refs. And we go back to it too, and it happens again on this road trip, is that the Islanders' offense can't compete with anyone in this league. It's just their defense's inability to keep the puck out of their net. Now, again, does Sorokin deserve some of the blame? Yes, but at the end of the day, he's faced the most amount of shots in the league, and he's just not superhuman like he was last year.
And Stefen, you might remember this. It escapes me at the moment, but I'm pretty sure there was a call later in the week that went the Islanders' way that looked pretty soft to me, but the Islanders basically got a nice little power play off of what almost looked like nothing. I think it ended up being called a hook, and it was almost no, you know what it was? It was the USA game. It was the USA game against, I think it was the final against who they play, Sweden?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was either that game or the Czech. Either way, it reminded me of what happened in the Islander game because it was just this ticky-tacky play. But the thing is, my point is, even though it wasn't the Islanders, is that these calls are going to go, your way one night, and they're going to go the other way another night. It just happens. But you bring up the Riley call, and it looked like he just got skated into.
Yeah.
But again, depending on the ref's angle, the speed that he saw it at, maybe he gave the benefit of the doubt and he thought Riley took a step to get in his way, and it ended up being an interference call. But yeah, that was a bad one.
Well, this is why I think refs should have to speak after games. They don't have to, back and forth with questions. If I ask a ref, hey, what did you see? And whether you agree or not with their call, and they say this is what I saw, if they saw what they thought they saw, they're making that call. Yeah. I have no issues if they get that wrong. If they're explaining that I saw Riley step, I saw him make a move to step. All right, you cannot like the call, but okay, he explained what he saw. Maybe you saw wrong, but in real time, that's what he saw. The problem is there's zero accountability, and I think that's an issue. I think refs should have to speak. Again, no issues if they missed it, but if they're explaining what they saw and they called what they saw, you can't really complain. You cannot like it, but you can't complain.
The league is very, very protective of the officials.
Yeah, and it makes sense.
I get it because it would be kind of a field day if you have them addressing the media every night. You know what I mean? So I kind of understand it. Is it frustrating? Sure. Does it seem like they're not held accountable, at least publicly? Absolutely. But I'm sure these guys are being spoken to after every game. What did you see there? Why'd you make that call? And
they're probably doing the same exact thing. And they say, okay, just let you know that wasn't correct. But if that's what you saw, and that's probably why there's not you don't see refs getting fired all the time. It's first off, it's a very fast
It's the
game.
toughest job.
Yeah.
It's the toughest job. I mean, I couldn't do that job. I give these guys a lot of credit. And the margin for error is just going to be higher in such a fast game like this, right? So it's tough. But the play that upset me most in that game was the Cal Clutterbuck play at center ice.
Throwing it up in the middle.
Later in the game, all he had to do was send it deep, and he tried to get a little cute. He saw Pajot coming up, but he didn't see what he was coming up into. He ends up trying to get that centering pass and basically to the center ice dot to Pajot as he's coasting through. He ends up getting his pocket picked. It goes the other way, and it ends up turning into a disaster. I mean, just all he had to do is get it deep. Penalty isn't called. They don't go into overtime down a man. Ultimately, that power play goal isn't scored. Do they still get the second point? We will never know. But they certainly would have had a better chance if Clutterbuck just makes a safer play.
And again, that's a veteran, not a rookie.
Right.
If it's a rookie, either way, it's not a good play. But you're more understanding. Okay, if it's like a Bolduc, then you're like still learning how to play this game.
Right.
That's a play again. And two is when you see a guy like Engvall benched for mistakes that he makes. I never thought Clutterbuck was going to get benched. But if Lane wants to do the accountability thing, then you thought, okay, maybe he sits a first shift of a game. We've seen that before in the past under Trotz, that a player sits. But again, I think Clutterbuck has more of that rope where Engvall's still second year here.
For sure.
Yeah.
But not only that, I mean, that stuff isn't universal across the board. When it comes to coaches, how they handle their players, they're all handled on an individual basis. And, some guys need tough love. Some guys, they need encouragement. Whatever it is.
Engvall clearly needs tough love. When he gets sad, he comes back and he has his best game.
Yeah, he scores a goal, right? And it seems like that seems like that's what Lane's strategy is with Engvall, where it's like, okay, he's had a rough couple of games. He needs to see a game from the press box, right? And he gives him a game in the press box. He comes back, he scores a goal, and ends up, working out very well. And maybe he's just a guy who needs that. Maybe down the road, like a guy like Clutterbuck, he gets a little more rope or whatever it is. But right now, it seems like he's a guy who Lane is willing to bench if and when he sees some issues. And maybe that even goes beyond Engvall and extends to that line. I know we're going to talk about them later, just with how they're performing. But maybe it was a wake-up call for all of them.
And for a fact, Clutterbuck is an ultimate pro team leader in that room. When they went to that locker room, he was like, guys, I'm so there's no way he was trying to make. Yeah, exactly. But I think we should talk about Arizona. Their best game.
Yeah.
Well,
of the week.
Yeah, best game of the week
of 2024.
Yeah. Well, first up, before the game, Matthew Barzal, all-star. Everyone flipped out. How did Dobson knock it in? Third in assists, second in minutes per game. I have a couple of theories. Sure. One, Barzal's a household name. It's all about draw for all-star games.
So,
but number two. Maybe, again, with no way to verify this, Dobson's played a lot of hockey. A lot. Do you think Lou wants to send him to an all-star game when he could relax over a break? He'll get there at some point.
Decent theory also.
He can get voted in.
But, so many silly things go into this stuff. It's also, if you pick one guy from this team, how's that going to affect picking another guy from another team? Because it's all positional, too. They have to figure out what goalies are going to go. They have to figure out, they only have so many defensemen, so many forwards, because they say, if we send Dobson, then we might not be, and I'm just picking a name out of the hat. Then they can't send Letang from Pittsburgh, or whoever it is. So that stuff goes into it, too. So, and especially with this format now, where they're doing it's 3-on-3, and now they're doing the captains again and stuff like that, they're doing their best with what they have. And does Noah Dobson deserve to go to the All-Star game? Of course he does.
Yeah. He
should have been the first guy, no question about it. But the league is juggling all these different things, and he might still get voted in anyway.
The East has one defenseman going so far.
Go.
But again, it's 3-on-3. Do you need a defenseman? Barzal also goes and competes in the fastest skater, which, again, that also probably plays a factor in it as well. But anyway, Barzal, he had a fantastic game against Arizona. Collects career point number 400 and career point number 401.
Yeah.
Mike Riley has a great game. Horvat's got a great game. Gauthier anytime Gauthier releases the puck, it's a snipe. And that was the biggest gripe with him over the last 3 or 4 years. He's all good. Sweet, no finish. That was essentially him.
Now he's finishing.
So great for them. But this game, again, you start the game, you go up 2-0. It's 2-1. You allow a goal in the second. And that was the second period where Ilya Sorokin bailed them out. That was vintage Sorokin of last year when the Islanders needed him to come up large. He made every save he had to. Minus one that he had no chance on.
Very rough second period for those guys.
Yeah, but then in the third, this is what we were talking about. When you play bad teams or weak teams, I think Arizona's a solid team. I didn't think Ingram had a great game, and I didn't think they played well, but they buried them in the third.
Yeah.
I mean, first off, 3-on-0s, 2-on-0. I mean, everything seemed like a fast break.
Yeah, and what's interesting is you wonder why that's not happening more across the board. And the theory I have here in the early going is it's happening against teams that you would, I guess, consider lesser teams, or, not your Vegases, not your Colorados, not your Torontos or whatever it is, right? I know they did it against Columbus, I think, early in the year.
7-3, yep.
Yeah, where they opened the scoring up in the third period instead of clamp down. Now, is that because they weren't actually going for the kill, or was it because they were playing against teams they were able to go for the kill against, right? We don't know if the Islanders are going to be able to put 2-3 goals up in a third period when they're up 2 or 3 goals, because they haven't really done that yet against the top team, right? It's always been tight against whether it's the Canes, the Avs, whoever it is, right? They always seem to be dragging them to the end of the game with them, right? And going for that extra point late in the game. So we've yet to see if they can pull away from a team like whether it's Colorado or whomever.
We go from Arizona, where they took advantage of all of Arizona's mistakes, to Vegas, where they could not take advantage of I didn't think Vegas played a great game. They just took advantage of every mistake.
In the first half.
Yeah.
First half of the game, they look good.
Again, the third period when they're down 4-2 already at that point, you could tell the game was done. The Islanders didn't have much. High danger chance after high danger chance, and Sorokin, he's making ridiculous saves. But start this game off, it was 1-0, and then Barzal tries to bank it off Thompson. And then 3 minutes go by.
Right.
And I know MSG cut to commercial, and we're watching, and we see it plays under review, and you're watching, you're like, that's a clear goal. He roofed that. So then it's 1-1, and then again, just breakdowns, defensive zone breakdowns. I got to look at this. Dorofeyev is left wide open at the back post. Wide open. Nothing Sorokin could do. Then you have the whole goal interference thing. And again, if you guys remember, Sorokin gets interfered with by Kolasar. His feet are in the crease. Islanders challenge, lose the challenge, allow a goal. So I asked Lane after the game what he thought about and why he made that challenge. So we have the audio here.
Well, we saw it's put in the blue paint. We saw Ilya's mask up against his body, and so it was the right call for us to challenge that.
Yeah, so they challenge it, they lose, they allow a goal. Sorokin, maybe a couple ones he wants back, but again, the Islanders just defensive zone structure wasn't great. And against Vegas, you give that team opportunities. And Logan Thompson settled in too. When he allows that tap in from Barzal there, you got to pepper him. And they didn't. And again, that wraps up a trip where they could have come home second in the Metro. They come home in the top wildcard spot, 1-2-1, 20 road points this year, which is 7th in the Metro. Only Columbus has less road points, and now you have 2 games at home, which makes those vital because then they go on the road for another 4.
No doubt, and that'll be against tough teams, but we got a break. So thanks so much for tuning into twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY and your favorite podcast providers. We're going to take that break. When we return, David Alter of the Hockey News covering the Leafs will be joining us. We'll be right back.
I don't want to hear it. It's over. I can't believe they fell short again.
Yeah, but they played so well. They made it to the semifinals 2 years in a row.
The semifinals aren't the cup. God damn it, I hate those Lightning.
They'll get another shot at it next year.
I don't even want to talk about it anymore, all right? They lost, okay? Let me just sit here and enjoy the one thing that makes me a little bit happy. This fresh, delicious, tasty, meaty, turkey-filled Blue Line combo. I eat 3 every day to help keep me strong.
Hey, Donnie, can I have one of those?
Coming right up. Talk about a blast from the Blue Line.
Blue Line Deli and Bagels. Our goal is to make you a hero.
Did you have a nice break? Well, it's time to get back on the couch for more Islanders therapy on Hockey Night in New York.
Welcome back to the program, ladies and gentlemen. You are watching Hockey Night in New York, and joining us right now from the Hockey News covering the Toronto Maple Leafs is Mr. David Alter. David, thanks so much for joining us. How you doing?
I'm doing great, guys. How are you guys doing tonight?
Doing great. You're talking to Sean and Stefen. So, obviously, the big news coming out of Toronto right now is it sounds like William Nylander is getting closer and closer to a new deal. Maybe we can talk about that to start.
Yeah, I mean, it's first reported by Elliot Friedman on the Saturday, and we're in San Jose, and it's in the second intermission of national broadcast in Canada. And so that news comes out, and we had known that talks had intensified over the last few days. And so in the past, whenever he was asked about it, he just said, I'm not going to talk about that, and kind of hold to it. Then recently we asked him, and he kind of smiled while answering that way. And then when he was asked if he was close, he kind of couldn't hide the expression. He pretty much wasn't saying it, but he knows what's going on. And so it sounds like it's close, and it could happen as soon as tomorrow. Certainly a high AAV if it goes in and around the 11.5 million, as Ellie Friedman reports. But that's a big commitment for a player who's right now, I believe, 4th in points right now and having a career year, and certainly betting on himself and evidently winning by having this huge impact that he's had through the first 37 games of the season.
And David, let's put your GM hat on here. If you were the GM, how high are you going on a Nylander annual value?
Well, I mean, it all depends on the years and everything there. I still think it's a little high, but I mean, this is just law of diminishing returns. They could have had it at 10 in the summer. They didn't do it. And now the asking price got higher. And so it's just the demand. And the Leafs were clearly at a state where they're coming around March, knowing what their team is now and kind of having to figure out, okay, what are they going to be able to acquire, knowing Nylander is going to have that number as the term next year, because the Leafs don't necessarily want rentals. They want to get guys with term back at the deadline. And that's how they're going to build out their team. They have a lot of money coming off the books a lot of one-year contracts this year outside of the core players. And so you get that locked up. You get guys who have term there. That's factoring into why this number is so high. But I do think it is high, and it's really going to challenge the Leafs as to what they do with Mitch Marner, whose contract will come up at the end of next season, and John Tavares as well.
Yeah, David, kind of to piggyback off of that, I was kind of just curious if the numbers are where it seems to be at 11.5 by 8, just what the general fallout is going to be for the Toronto Maple Leafs, just because they've had a history of struggling with the cap, just given the, obviously the COVID situation hurt everybody with that, but the Maple Leafs are one of the teams who's hurt specifically, especially after bringing in John Tavares. I mean, and you look at how they've kind of struggled to fill out the rest of their lineup, having this top-heavy salary structure with all these stars up there, is this still going to be an issue for them, even with these guys coming off the one-year deals like you were talking about?
I think the big thing is they're going to bank on these annual 5% increases in the cap helping them out here and not having another pandemic that freezes things economically. But I mean, that's not necessarily a huge risk, but it's a gamble like it was in 2019 when they were doing this and signing a lot of these guys. So there is that factor. I think I did the math on it. If it was 11.5, that it would be, for the core 4 guys, it'd be 53% for 24-25.
That's wild.
Which is a lot at that first one, but it could come down provided you assume Tavares' cap number is going to be much less than the 11 million it is right now, considering his age. And then you've got Mitch Marner to kind of figure out, and where does he fit in? He's going to want to raise from his 10.9, which was already high as it was there. As for if they got hurt, yeah, they probably did get hurt in terms of being able to re-sign players that they would have liked to for cap considerations. But I think, at least under Kyle Dubas, we don't know how it's going to be under Brad Treliving now as a GM. But under Kyle Dubas, I think he did a pretty okay job in getting value players at minimum deals, like a lot of hometown guys that came in, like the Spetzas, the Mark Giordano's right now, for near minimum, and leveraging those situations to kind of help themselves out. So it probably won't be all too much different in that regard, and the Leafs will still be able to build around that. It's really, does the cap go up 5% every year that allows them to address the other areas? And we know Brad Treliving wants to remake the defense with bigger guys, and certainly that might eat into it for sure.
Dave, Austin Matthews, all he's done since he's come into this league is score goals. Are you shocked anymore when he puts up the amount of goals that he's putting up at this alarming rate?
So what was really funny was that game against San Jose yesterday, just the release just seems to be more wicked than it's ever been. Like it was unreal. He didn't score, but there was one play where it looked like the puck was behind him and there was no way he was going to get a shot off coming in across the blue line. And I believe it was in the first period. And that hits the iron, like out of nowhere. There were like 6 posts in that game, but Matthews just keeps playing like target practice with the goalies right now. It's unbelievable, and he's getting all of these different types of goals, and so it doesn't surprise me. I think the only thing that really maybe surprised me or left some doubt was, he was playing hurt last year, and so he had 40 goals and was considered a down year. And I guess the only thing that was going to surprise me this year was, can he get back to where he was 2 years ago or be better, knowing that he's going to be much healthier? And so certainly he's far exceeded that. As a guy who's had some injuries, he's yet to play in a full 82 game season for whatever reason. He hasn't played in all 82. But that doesn't seem to slow him down. And he's outpacing his 60 goal pace from the 21-22 season that won him the Hart Trophy. So nothing surprises me anymore at this point. Even when I think that there's a way he's kind of going down, he just seems to find a whole new level.
Yeah, no, he's been incredible. And just to pivot to goaltending, obviously there's been a shakeup there. Samsonov gets waived. Martin Jones takes the reins over. He's been successful, 7-3-0, 2.08 goals against average, 9.32 save percentage. Talk about Martin Jones coming in and kind of being a little savior here between the pipes. And is this the long-term solution for this team for the rest of the season, or do they kind of have to, still worry about a little insurance there to make sure they're successful?
Yeah, well, I think the big solution is Joseph Wall once he comes back. The problem is he's not really been on the ice, and he's been hurt since December 7th with a high ankle sprain. Now, that might have changed while the Leafs were away, I guess we'll find out when they practice tomorrow. But Joseph Wall is the goaltender that they believe is their future, the one that they're going to commit to long term and kind of be the guy. And then if that means they kind of have to go Wall Jones for a little bit, I think now what they've seen in Jones that he's more than capable of spot duty or playing even more if that's the case. And with Ilya Samsonov, it's going to be a reevaluation to kind of figure out where he's at because they've tried anything and everything with him until they put him on waivers. And he just wasn't getting that same form back that he showed last season. And so for the Leafs, it's beneficial that contract will be up at the end of the year and they won't have to worry about that cap commitment should they decide to move on there. But Martin Jones at $875,000, very fortunate that they put him through the waiver process, put a little signing bonus deterrent in there as well to make sure no one would claim him because the Leafs have had their goalies claimed a lot when it comes to depth guys. And so, Jones was the first goalie to play in back-to-back nights this season. The Leafs have tried to avoid that situation. They really didn't want to put in a developmental prospect in Dennis Hildeby that they felt is not ready yet. And so even though he's been up with the club, Jones has been pretty well. At .932, he's leading the NHL right now in goal saves above expected per 60 right now. So certainly someone who's been capable in the past of kind of playing a lot in a long stretch, and he seemed to have captured it here again in Toronto.
So you mentioned goals saved above expected. So Martin Jones is bailing the defense out. I know the defense is banged up, but what have you seen from the defense, especially the guys that have come in to really plug some holes here with the injuries?
Yeah, so it's been a lot better over the last 5 games, Stefen. Like I think it's been a disaster. You look at it, you look at the expected goals of possession numbers, all that stuff for the Leafs this year, and you compare it at this mark to previous seasons, they'd usually be in the top 5, top 10. They were in like the mid to bottom third this year. Like it was really a struggle, not beating teams that they're supposed to beat. A lot of the other issues, just bad turnovers and bad goaltending, a lot of stuff that was just not going their way. But the volume of shots that they're giving up against in the last 5 games has been fewer and fewer. And so I think the challenge was with the goaltenders down to kind of tell the defense and even the forwards, because they play that whole 5-man unit, to just buy in a little bit more, protect the net, and be more responsible and get back to the brand of hockey that they were playing in previous years. Because the way it was kind of pushing, it was not going really well. So they've really stepped it up. I've been really impressed with Simon Benoit, who's come in as a depth guy who was probably going to be like an 8 or 9 defenseman and has now become an everyday guy with John Klingberg out for the season and Connor Timmins not necessarily kind of moving up into that spot that they expected him to be in. He's he's the biggest guy, 6'3", an agitator after scrums, always getting that extra cross check in and ready to step up and fight for guys. And the Leafs really haven't had a defenseman like that in a long time. They kind of had that in Luke Shen at the deadline, and then they lost him. They couldn't bring him up. Now he's kind of filled that spot, and that's really been the big difference here. So defensively, they've stepped up and they've been a lot more physical. That's what I think the Islanders are going to see this week.
Right on, David. And I know the Maple Leafs are still a few games off from the halfway point. I think about 4. But maybe just in comparison to seasons prior, like who are this year's Toronto Maple Leafs, and maybe just what is the fan confidence level looking at this team halfway through the year here, how they performed and maybe what they might need going ahead at the trade deadline.
I think this is a team that is just trying to figure out what they want to be for the playoffs. There's no doubt about what the Toronto Maple Leafs are in the regular season. That's been fairly established for the last 5 years. They've been at or near the top of the standings, 100-point seasons, all that stuff. They've done that. What they did this year under Brad Treliving is bring in a lot of more physical guys that if it's a little wobbly on defense, it brings some of the other things that maybe the Leafs are missing from a postseason standpoint that can give them that edge, more defensive responsibility, trust, all that other stuff. And so that's what the Leafs are this year. It's been hot and cold, but I think it's just data points that they're just trying to figure out what this team can do in its most stressed situations to be better poised for the playoffs. So I think this is actually better for them than in previous years, because in previous years, they'd be an offensive juggernaut that would rise up early in the standings. And then for the last 2 months of the season, sometimes their fault, sometimes not their fault. Maybe it's just the way the division is. Boston takes first place. And then for 2 months, the Leafs are not really playing for anything other than second or third in the Atlantic. And that's it. There's no fear of missing out. And there's no real carrot at the end to try and get out and chase the Bruins, because it was, as you saw last season, it was pointless. So now, fighting for their spot, playing meaningful games every day, they're building good positive stress that I think, we'll see, but I think will actually set them up better for the playoffs, because they've just had to be on it every game, and there really hasn't been any type of game that they go into that they feel like if they don't get it, that they might be in jeopardy. And I think that's good stress for them in the future, once the season flips beyond the deadline here.
Right on, David. And the last one from me, just maybe you can give us a little bit of Toronto's perspective on the New York Islanders this season. I'm sure, all the the news about them blowing all these leads this year has gotten up there. But maybe what's your look at the New York Islanders coming into this game this week?
Yeah, the Islanders are just kind of, they're there. I think it's hard to say, because no one disputes the offensive talent that the Islanders have. They've got weapons. Bo Horvat, when they got Bo Horvat, everyone had big expectations for the Islanders last year. And so they set themselves up. They do all this stuff. And then, you kind of watch in the offseason, you see some of the signings that are very low, that are trying to do these long-term deals for money value plays that if they don't work, at least it's minimal. But if they do work, it's a low cap hit.
Right.
And then you kind of figure it out. But I think the Leafs just know that the Islanders can be a pretty heavy team, very physical. They've always had the one thing the Leafs have always known about the Islanders, and I know the fourth line has changed a bit, but they've had one of the best fourth lines in the NHL consistently for years in terms of intimidation factor, in terms of all that other stuff, that the Leafs have always really struggled to find that fourth line. And they've been burned on that in games in New York, whether it was the Islanders or Rangers, where they would get goals against with the fourth line on. And I think in that last game, I think Cal Clutterbuck was on for some goals against the Leafs. For the Islanders. So it just seems to be a real problem. That's what the Leafs really know about the Islanders. And other than that, it's really just they can be up there, but then things kind of go the wrong way. And so I think that's what the Leafs know of the Islanders. And then, of course, there's always the revenge factor every time the Leafs go into Long Island, and the boos that you hear for John Tavares. And so that was kind of a fun experience, seeing the 1,000 point happen in that building, just because of the pure chaos and circus that we as writers and storytellers like to see.
Yeah, now that you mentioned that, was there any kind of commentary on that in the Toronto media?
100% there was.
So I'm curious to see if you had any nuggets for us.
You see it on you see the discourse all the time when it comes to that kind of stuff, right? Whenever the Leafs go in there, there's always this all Leafs Twitter. All I see is, can't they get over it? All this other stuff. And listen, I kind of get it from the Islanders' standpoint, because the Leafs kind of went through something similar many years ago with Matt Sundin, where Matt Sundin, the Cliff Fletcher was brought in for a second tenure as GM of the Leafs in 2008, and it was widely believed that the goal of bringing Fletcher in there was to try and talk Sundin into waiving his no trade so that the Leafs could get assets back. And he didn't believe in doing that in a mid-season move. And I actually think what Matt Sundin did was worse, because he said his reasoning was, I don't believe in joining a team mid-year for something like that, but then joined the Canucks at the very last day eligible, miss training camp, miss the first couple of months of the season before electing to sign a contract, a big one, with the Vancouver Canucks. And a lot of people forget this, but the Leafs fans did. There were boos. I was at that game as a junior reporter covering the visiting room, at the All Sports radio station in Toronto when that return game first happened for Matt Sundin there. And there were boos and there were people who were really upset at Matt Sundin. But then when they did the video tribute and all that other stuff, it flipped. They're like, okay, yes. But what was funny about this was the Islanders had a graphic ready. It said 1,000, and the boos just rained harder. Like like the organization did the right thing, but the fans still gave it to them, and that was pretty funny.
Oh,
and
yeah.
So like I get it. I totally get it. The Leafs standpoint from all of that is like, okay, when are Islanders fans going to move on from it? And maybe it's after his playing days are done where they can't boo him inside anymore. I don't know. But like a lot of things seem to happen that were just kind of like, okay, we're going to like, I don't think it was a coincidence. You guys can correct me, but like, I don't think it was a coincidence that they retired Butch Goring's number like immediately after Tavares.
That was not a coincidence.
Probably not.
So like, all that stuff. So like, I don't know. It's just we'll see what happens. It's all fun. I love it. Like I love going to New York. I love the passion of the fan base in New York and all that stuff. And so I think just Leaf fans there's a lot of them. And so I think they felt, okay, at some point, give the man his due already. But it seems like that's not going to happen anytime soon until I don't know maybe when he's retired. I have no idea.
Yeah, and it was a tough scene when all the players spilled off of the bench too onto the UBS Arena ice. That was that was definitely a tough one for fans to swallow. And I think if they didn't score that goal in overtime to win the game, they'd still be hurting a little bit from that night. So that kind of helped.
It was tough for us to witness too because it happened so late in the game that we weren't like in the seats to watch it or like out to kind of feel the vibe because as us writers we have to like kind of get ready and be kind of away from the bowl. And so when happened, I'm like, oh, I wish I could like feel and grab and see that energy there. But it was a sight. It was for sure. It was something you can see it even like in the hallway when we're talking to him afterwards. Like it really meant something to him to not only do that, but to do it there in that building too.
Well, David, this has been a lot of fun. Thanks so much for joining us tonight, giving us some time. Hope to have you on down the road, and have a great rest of your Sunday night, man.
Yeah, you got it. See you guys soon.
Thanks. See you Thursday, Dave.
Take it easy. All right, folks, that was David Alter, beat writer for the Toronto Maple Leafs over at the Hockey News. Great stuff and always wonderful talking about the Islanders John Tavares saga. Another story comes out in that 1,000-point game. Of course it was going to happen on the UBS.
You could have guaranteed it.
100%.
Like, if you're a betting person and you didn't take Tavares getting points in that game, then what are you doing? But yeah, it was weird how that all played out where they actually had to ask the league if they were allowed, I think the Islanders too, if they were allowed to go onto the ice to celebrate, and they gave them the okay.
Yeah, regardless of where they were going to be playing.
But if you noticed, after the Islanders won it in overtime, was it Horvat that won it, right? Horvat did the same thing.
Called everybody out into the ice.
Which again, I think he really everything Horvat's done. Last year obviously he struggled, but everything he said with Shannon or in the media, he got on the fans' good side immediately.
Right.
And he's shown the passion. I mean, even the fans when being in Arizona and things like that. He kept saying, he goes, I'm so proud to be part of a franchise that has these this is crazy to him.
Yeah.
And again, he badmouthed maybe the fans of Vancouver, and then he cycled back and said, listen, it wasn't the fans, it was management I wasn't happy with. But yeah, David Alter first does a fantastic job covering the Leafs. Really dialed in. He made a great point about the Sundin thing. I mean, it's similar. Yeah. But see, again, the Leaf fans got over it. Even if when Tavares retires, I don't think it's ever happening.
It certainly doesn't seem
like if he comes back to do the military appreciation, maybe they'll cheer for the guy that's getting the military jersey, but not for Tavares.
The only reason why this will eventually die out is because John Tavares is eventually going to retire. Like, it's only coming out when he shows up, at home ice for the Islanders and the fans boom. It's not like a Rangers pot vent sucks. Unless Islander fans, maybe this is a call to action, but they might have to start their own Tavares sucks chant for it to extend beyond him, his playing career, right? But once he retires, I mean, it's. So
you're telling me that Tavares is not getting to the Islanders Hall of Fame?
You know what? I feel like he will. I
think he should.
No, he will because it's not about that.
It's about what he did for the organization.
Look, they put the graphic up. Of course, they were going to do that. Like the team is always going to do the classy thing, right? Yeah. Regardless of how the fans feel to a point and whatever. However, he came to that decision. However, he ended up going to the Toronto Maple Leafs. Yeah, he's going to end up in the Hall of Fame. He's done some memorable stuff for this franchise, even though the most memorable thing is the worst. and the most recent, he's still gonna have a place in the Islanders' history. I mean, he would have to have some sort of, tiff with the franchise itself, a la Pat LaFontaine.
Yep.
Where they're at odds. John Tonelli, it took years for John Tonelli to get back in the graces of the franchise, and for the franchise to get back in the good graces of him, right? They were at odds for a very long time. So
you speak about the board, about playing that graphic on the board.
Yeah.
We were in Vegas, and they were in a commercial, and they're showing like "Happy Birthday." Then there was a proposal. It was on the board for 3 seconds, and I was like, "That stinks." If she's looking down, there's no scene or anything like that. But
serves you right for proposing at a sports arena anyway. That's my take on that.
Very true.
But great stuff from David Alter. Before we pick things up, why don't we take one more quick break? Before we do, want to remind you all about our friends at Main Street Board Game Cafe in Huntington Village on Long Island's North Shore. Games for sale and for open play, food and drink, beer and wine, fun, and friends. Bring the magic of phones down, eyes up, tabletop board games to your family. Our staff will help you find the right game from old favorites to the hottest new releases. We have everything from strategic to easy party games. Get off your screens for a night your family will remember. Looking for meetups to join? Our Magic the Gathering, Dungeons & Dragons, Lorcana, and organized play communities are welcoming for all. We also do parties and corporate events located at 307 Main Street in Huntington Village. Go to mainstboardgamecafe.com for more information. Main Street Board Game Cafe. Find your crowd. Unplug your game. And with that, we will take a break. We'll be back.
New York Islanders fans, Sunday night is hockey night in New York. Whether you were raised at the barn in Uniondale or born in the stable at Belmont, tune in to Hockey Night in New York. Catch us live from Floored Media in Rockville Center, Sunday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, as we cover all things Islanders at twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY. All episodes are also available on YouTube and all your favorite podcast providers. And for all you social butterflies, you can follow at Hockey Night NY on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram for all the latest updates. Hockey Night in New York, the best night of the week for any Islanders fan. Thanks for giving some time to our sponsors. Ready to talk more Isles? The train rolls on right here on Hockey Night in New York.
That's right, folks. The train rolls on here at Hockey Night in New York, and we are going to continue the conversation. Stefen, I believe you still had some notes on that Vegas game. You want to talk about Matt Martin, what happened there?
Yeah, so Jordan fart on the it's such
What'd
a
you
weird
say?
name. I don't know. Yeah.
What's that now?
God bless you. Wi-Fi. No, so Matt Martin gets hit from behind in the third period. It looked like it should have been a 5-minute major. Clear as day. The refs talk it over. Lane looks furious. Martin, again, very slow to get up. Third player of the game to get hurt. Now, again, Zizekas kind of did it to himself, missing a hit. Gauthier got tangled up. But for Martin, again, it was 2 guys. That guy that I just said that I'm not going to repeat his name got the penalty.
No, say it again.
But no, I can't. I'm going to end up cursing in some language and get in trouble. But so after the game, I asked Lane and said, did you think that should have been 5-minute and a game misconduct? And here's what he had to say.
Well, I think Marty's back was facing him the entire time. Sometimes a player turns into it and he's responsible, but I don't think that Matt Martin in that particular situation turned his back on anybody. I think it was clear that it was turned right from the get-go.
Yeah, and again, it's one thing if it's 5-2. Again, Martin, like Lane just said, is sometimes there's players that put themselves in really bad spots where last second they turn to the boards, and that player, that player is responsible for putting himself in a vulnerable spot. But Martin never turned. It was 17 showing the entire, and again, 2 guys hit him, and I thought that again the refs all talk it over, and I think if they called it a major, because you can call it a major on the play and move it down, they call it a minor, and it's really hard for them to then add it and make it more, but. Again, you want to get, Nick Cousins has been in the news a lot for the hits that he's laid. I know Kevin Biesca flipped on him on Sportsnet. These are the kind of hits that have to be out of this game. And again, there's accidental hits, open ice hits that happen. Bedard, the other day got hurt, broken or fractured jaw on a clean hit, just a tough hit. A guy like Martin, again, who's up there in age, you hate to see those kinds of things.
Well, like I said, Stefen, there's a clear bias against the New York Islanders when it comes to these calls. So, look, I mean, you're right. It did look like it should have been a major. We're not going to find out what the reasoning is, right? They make their call, and that's pretty much it. Because, like we said before, there's no public accountability, and they're not going to be explaining each and every call. But I mean, like a lot of things, whether it's goaltender interference, which Nylander also had an issue with, right? There was a play in front of the net where could it have been interference because the guy was in the crease right in front of Sorokin? Maybe. I didn't think it was much. I was okay with the call standing, but on another night, that gets called interference.
But so earlier in the day, I forgot exactly what game it was. That exact play, maybe a little more contact to the helmet of whoever it was, but it was called goalie interference. But to me, again, I watched that play. I'm going, Sorokin's got if he wants that call, and this is the biggest issue with that, and I know we have to move on here, is that with that call not being made, by definition, it should have been goal interference because his foot's in the crease and he makes contact with Sorokin. Now, to me, that's not. It didn't impact the play. What this is going to force goalies to do now, though, is like in basketball when the guy goes for the N1 and jumps off the defender. Right. Now you're forcing goalies to have to flop because if Sorokin goes to push onto Kolesar, or even if he falls back and stumbles, he could say that Kolesar was in the crease and I fell back, and now you're forcing goalies to do things that make it look worse. And again, they have to this summer. We talk about it every time. Make it a basic thing. If the skates are in the crease, no go. Go back to those rules where it's blatant.
Yeah,
because there's too much interpretation.
Tell the
here.
Buffalo Sabres that.
Yeah, I just think it's too much of it's clear. Same thing with kicking. To me, there's so many calls that if you put the puck in the net by kicking it or angling your skate, it should not be a goal. If it goes off your skate and your skate never moved, fine. But if you angle or anything, it shouldn't be a goal. It's just too hard to tell at this point. But again, that's a topic for another day. Yeah, that's a
segment for another time.
I think we need to talk about the Islanders' second line.
We can do that.
Okay, let's do it. So the Islanders' second line, again, last couple of years, it was the Nelson show. His linemen's never really helped him out. Palmieri comes back from back-to-back concussions last year. Instant connection with Nelson. They're firing on all cylinders. You add Engvall to that line. It's not just the best line on the Islanders. It's one of the better lines in hockey. Yep. And then they bring Engvall back. I know Alter made a great point that you lock in guys to long-term deals at low AAVs, and you take it, okay. I think it was worth the risk for the Islanders to do that. Yep. God forbid that Engvall and that line connected. Now, Engvall this year, wishy-washy. Everyone loves to complain about points with Engvall. And to me, that was never an issue early on in the year because if they counted the third assist on plays, he was getting that. And he's racking up the points.
For sure.
The problem now is that line isn't producing the way they were. So I have some numbers here.
Okay.
Last 7 games, this is all even strength. Nelson's got a goal and 2 assists, 5-on-5. Last 7, Engvall. He's got 1 goal, 0 assists in his last 13. Palmieri's got 2 goals, 2 assists in his last 13. So essentially over the last 13 games here, it's really only been Nelson. And that's an issue because these guys on his line are supposed to take the pressure off of him, especially Engvall, because if Engvall is going, Engvall's game is clear-cut north-south. The problem that got Engvall in trouble, and he's done it again a couple of times now, is that he goes south.
Right.
And when he's got the long reach, but he doesn't have the Barzal skating to evade a defender and go the other way and create more time and space. Right. It's like slow motion. And again, I'm not blaming Engvall. That's just not his game. And with Palmieri, this is a guy that's a legit, probably one of their best long distance shooters on the team, but also a guy that cuts the net. And you're not seeing that again. Last night against Vegas, he gets in a breakaway and doesn't score. And if he scores there and the Islanders go up 2-1, especially the way Thompson's been mentally this year, he's been shelled a lot in games. And even 2 games earlier, he allowed 5 goals. Right. And we were talking to the guys that cover Vegas, and they said, listen, if they score probably 1 or 2 more goals there, Thompson's really struggled to find his game again in games, and the Islanders allowed him to make those big saves. And again, maybe, you're more, I'm a goalie, you're a forward defender. When your goalie has the glove in the right hand, if you're coming down, you might forget that. In the moment. Sure. And I think for Palmieri, he looks up on that shot. I think it was intentional to go blocker, and Thompson made a great save. But it's, again, those guys not coming through where it's kind of like Nelson has to do it all again. And I don't think that's fair to Nelson when those are 2 guys that are capable. They're not hurt. They got to play better. Now you're thinking, okay, is it going to get to a point where Lane's got to make... It's not just not just Engvall. Does he have to maybe sit Palmieri? I asked him, I said, what have you seen from Palmieri this year? And he said he has to be quicker in his first 2 steps. And I said, what do you mean by that? He goes, it's just going to be harder on the pucks, get to the pucks. And again, that's an issue when this is not a rookie. These aren't rookies. And again, Engvall sat and he's bounced back. But, a couple of years ago, remember Trotz sat Palmieri?
Sure.
So again, Nelson needs more help. Thankfully for the Islanders, that top line's been lethal. But even the third line's struggling now too, where they're playing limited amount of minutes. Last night they get caught in the zone. I think it was 45 seconds all in the zone. That was when Mayfield and Boldu got caught out there for 1:30 on one shift. Again, the Islanders are having a hard time right now with their middle six. Even I think the fourth line's been fine. They were out there for a goal, but I just think they've been okay. The middle six got to pick it up.
Yeah, for sure, and it's something to note and keep an eye on. I mean, as we say, every line, every player, every team goes through, highs and lows, where you're on a streak, when you're on a cold streak. Right now, the second line isn't picking it up, and yeah, I mean, if it continues, then it's something that they may have to consider options, whether it's shaking up the lines, maybe bringing a guy in, with Oliver Wahlstrom, maybe get a look, or whatever it is.
You bring up Wahlstrom, and we keep talking about it over and over. I'm not going to do the dead horse expression because I mess it up every time, but he is not a bottom six guy.
Right.
Does he, if he comes back in, do they give him a chance in the top six? Because right now, again, it has to continue and get better. It's got to get worse.
Yeah,
but now,
we're not there yet.
No,
we're not there yet.
If we get there, though, and Wahlstrom does get a chance in the top six, he's got to bury that first game.
9 goals in his first game.
Yeah, he's got to do what Austin Matthews has done the whole season in one game. But again, we're not there yet. That being said, though, 2 games at home against very tough teams, and I know we'll get to that in a second. You need your top 6 to play like a true top 6. And again, the top line's been great. I mean, Lee's maybe has a couple of chances last night to score, but Arizona, that line absolutely dominated. You got to see them do that against tough competition.
Yeah, and they need support, and they're going to need it in the upcoming games. So right now, let's blaze through what's on tap.
And now, it's time for What's on Tap, a look ahead at the Islanders' upcoming schedule.
That's right, folks. It's time for What's on Tap, and the Islanders return home on Tuesday. They will host the Vancouver Canucks, who are at the top of the Pacific Division playing very good hockey, so that is going to be a tough test. Then Toronto comes to town, as you know. We talked about them plenty with David Alter. That's going to be, I believe, a 7 o'clock puck drop on Thursday, and then Saturday they go into Nashville. They're kind of middle of the standings, fighting for a wild card, I believe, over there in the West, so that'll be a tough game as well. That'll obviously have a little narrative regarding Barry Trotz being the GM over there, so that'll be interesting. So, Stefen, you look at these 3 games, what do you see?
Tough. It's going to be very tough. And again, you look at Vancouver, and they faced Vancouver already this year, and they lost. In overtime, blew leads. And again, you have to learn from your mistakes. Mistakes are going to happen in every game, streaks, whatever. That's going to happen. When you play this team again, you know what their strength. JT Miller has been incredible. Brock Besser has found a scoring touch. Quinn Hughes is probably one of the better defensemen in the league, and Demko is elite at times. I mean, but Vancouver just beat the Devils. I think it was 5-2. JT Miller had 2 goals. It's a tough team to beat. They're at top of the Pacific. They're very confident. No Beauvillier this time. He's gone. He's on Chicago.
Right.
But again, this is the Islanders have to find a way to not mimic what they did against them last time. And again, that was a very tough road trip for them where blowing leads was just every game. And again, though, when you have a mediocre road trip going 1-2-1, 2 games at home, I asked Martin, I said, how important is it now to have the crowd behind you? And he said obviously every game points are the same, but we're going on the road again. I mean, we got to win these at home. We got to collect points at home.
These are big games.
And again, it's
a tough month.
They go on the road for 4 more games and they close out the month, I think, with 3 or 4 at home. But we talked about January, last year's January.
Yep.
How bad it was. You can't look at it. The division is that close again. You can't just give up points. I guess especially when
they had a 1-1 in 1 week, and now they're in the top wild card spot. They went from 3 to top wild card. I mean, that's how tight it is. I mean, you're going to have these teams are going to shuffle themselves through the standings from here until the end of the season, until a couple of teams maybe hit a stride, right? Whether it's Carolina, the Islanders, or whoever it is. These guys are going to keep flip-flopping until somebody, says, okay, we're one of the better teams here, and they start taking off.
And you're seeing the luxury again. It's just different teams. Like the Flyers again. Everyone, if you talked about a month ago, it's like, all right, when are they going to drop? When are they going to drop?
Right.
And they just find ways to keep winning games, and the Rangers get points and get wins. That multiple save, I don't know if you saw on Zibanejad.
Oh, yeah.
Sheesh. Anyway, Carolina, though, only gets 1 point in their game. The Devils lose. I mean, again, the Islanders, not that they're getting bailed out, but those teams pick it up and the Islanders don't. It could be 3 games and the Islanders are in 7th.
That's what makes these home games so crucial coming up this week, because they drop those games and then they're going to, lose even more points there. They're going to have the teams like the Capitals, the Penguins, the Flyers, whoever it is, gain a point or 2 here or there. It's going to happen just because there's so many teams involved, right? So they have to kind of right the ship pretty immediately here at home against 2 tough teams coming in from Canada. Can they do it? Of course. Will they? Remains to be seen. We will see.
And then you go, and the road trip's going to be very tough. It's Nashville, Minnesota, Winnipeg, and Chicago. And again, Nashville is one of those teams that's struggling. Like Arizona, not to the same extent, different teams. But if you do have a hard time at home against these two teams, you got to start your road trip on the right foot. And again, we don't know if Varlamov is going to be ready. I thought for Sorokin, if he had won last night, my story was Varlamov being hurt is a blessing in disguise because it'll allow Sorokin to play every single game and find his game. Because again, last year, when Varlamov was out, he went 4-3-1, and the team did, but his numbers were amazing, and he ended up snapping a personal 8-game skid, and he found his rhythm and became
they weren't
that.
Giving him goals last year, yeah.
But the numbers were really good, and right now, again, Sorokin's numbers haven't been great. And I thought early on in that game against Vegas, I said maybe there's very good game against Arizona. You beat Vegas. Now Sorokin's getting into that rhythm that maybe he doesn't get in when Varlamov's an option. Unfortunately, Sorokin wasn't great later on in that game. And had some issues. So again, this is a huge test for Sorokin because Appleby is not playing. It's just, I thought maybe they would have put him in. If it got out of hand in the second,
that's it.
But even last year when they had Corey Schneider,
right, no,
Sorokin played. So again, this is a Sorokin show, and this is right now where you say this is why you paid me the big bucks. This is the point. Again, he's been all right. I think the numbers don't justify it. He hasn't been as good as last year, but again, high bar. But these are games now. If the Islanders are struggling, they need Sorokin, like against Arizona, to bail them out. So we'll see.
We will see, and that'll do it for What's on Tap. And before we get into Hero of the Week, I'm going to tell you all about our friends at Isles Fix. Islanders Country, get your daily fix of Isles news, highlights, and analysis by subscribing to Isles Fix, the only Monday through Friday Islanders newsletter sent directly to your inbox. Sign up for free or become a paid subscriber for added benefits at ilesfix.substack.com. And with that, we will move in to the Hero of the Week. That's right, folks. It's time for the Hero of the Week, brought to you by the Blue Line Deli and Bagels half-price hero, which this week is the Poke Check, featuring roast beef, turkey, ham, Swiss and American lettuce, and tomato and mayo on a hero. Stop on in to the Huntington Blue Line Deli and Bagels location for half off the Poke Check. And with that, Stefen Rosner, who is your Hero of the Week?
My Hero of the Week is Matthew Barzal. It was a milestone week. Again, career point 400 and 401. 1 goals, 4 assists. Big goal against Vegas at that point in that game.
Yes.
Again, you go down 1-0 early. And Barzal, 40 points in 38 games, 11 goals, 29 assists. He is the 4th Islander to do so, get 40 points in 38 games. Yashin 0102. Tavares 17-18, Bailey 17-18. Isles Fix tweeted that out.
Since the Dynasty years.
Yes, of course.
Yes. Yeah, no, quite a year for him. He's actually ahead of his pace in his rookie year as well. So that's something to keep an eye
and
on.
All-Star for the 3rd time in his career.
Yes. Hopefully he will get to defend the fastest skater championship. And I don't know how the hell that's going to work with this new format.
I think that's going to be the same.
Yeah.
I think it's just the game with the draft and stuff.
Yeah, but they're changing up some of the competition too, and I don't know. And they're doing they're basically competing against each other in the skills competition. They're doing like a grand prize, and they're all getting points. Like I don't think it's for the teams anymore. I think it's based on individual accolades. So
that'll be fun.
That will be interesting. Maybe we'll actually watch.
Maybe
we'll see. All right, so that'll do it for Stefen's Hero of the Week. Now it's time for mine, who is Bo Horvat, going 2-1-3 against the Coyotes in that 5-1 win. Obviously, they dropped the other 2 games, so slim pickings for finding a true hero here. But Bo Horvat had a big game against the Arizona Coyotes, and he's been having a big season too. And he's a guy who, if you had maybe a 5-on-5 format in the All-Star game, maybe he's a guy who gets voted in. I don't know how many guys the Islanders are going to get. Maybe one more guy. You'd like to think if it is, it's going to be Noah Dobson.
I just think everything he's done this year, again, take away the offense. The defense, that's been more important. Again, that's not going to get you all-star accolades.
Right.
But that's probably the most important aspect of his game that's developed, especially with all the guys being hurt. But I do have one more shout-out in terms of a hero. And Islander fans.
Hey.
Arizona Coyotes Mullet Arena. That place was 75% Islander fans.
Wow.
Every time the Islanders scored, you got the yes chance. The Coyotes in arena.
You could hear it on the telecast.
In arena was trying to do some Coyote chants, and the Islanders were just mimicking it. But also, too, is very humbling, grateful experience is that at Mullet, we are behind the lower, like the last row of seats in the lower bowl. We're behind there. And so fans can come up and talk to us. And I probably got like 30 people saying like, I love your work. Thanks so much.
Awesome.
So that was, again, that meant so much. So just special shout out to the fans that really made that this trip like extra special.
There you go. And hey, great job, Islander fans, for making the trip out west. I believe there was a lot of fans in Vegas,
yes,
too.
I think Arizona to Vegas, whether they flew or drove, it was good.
I'm sure that was a fun trip as well. Two fun areas, from what I understand.
Yeah, I saw a bunch of Islander fans getting on the fight this morning. It looked like they hadn't slept in years.
Yeah, that makes sense. Vegas will do that. All right, so that was Hero of the Week, and now it's time for Questions Brewing. Ed.
It's time for questions.
You usually say, "Hey Ed,
a question.
how you doing?"
You know what, buddy? You just gotta be ready. You gotta be ready to anticipate where we're going here. There's not a format, But Ed, how was your holidays? Happy New Year? How you doing? And how's Jay doing next to you?
Jay, well, tonight I'm a little more, I'm a little under the weather.
Oh no!
My New Year's I spent DJing. I was working.
Hey, look at you!
DJ New Year's. Missed you there. I guess you were
over at RJD.
Yeah,
sick
Very
invite.
Nice.
Right in town.
Sick invite.
Very nice.
Oh well, we promote.
I was covering.
You gotta check out social media.
To be fair,
buddy.
I was covering the Islanders Penguins game, not in Pittsburgh,
You got
but
a
I had a
job
job
to
to
do.
do.
That happened that night.
Yeah.
But I got sick that night, and I was sick all week. But I'm good now.
You look pretty good.
Yeah,
You look
I'm
all right.
recovering.
Okay, so why don't we get into the questions, man? How are we looking there?
We have questions. Our first
right.
is from MJ Beckman.
Hello.
He said, "Is Lane selective with his punishments, like scratching and benching?"
Yes.
As we discussed earlier, yeah, I think he is. I think all coaches are. I think some players earn their stripes in one way or another where they're a lot less likely to get benched, even when maybe they go through a streak where you say to yourself, this guy deserves it. I know Anders Lee got that talk from fans a little bit, even earlier this year, maybe even last year, where, he wasn't really pulling his weight in the points department. He has been now. That's quieted down, thankfully. But yeah, I think certain players, usually it's the younger guys, usually it's the rookies and stuff. They have a shorter leash. They also get more learning moments here, right? Where, getting a lesson, like where they make a bad play, it's like, all right, buddy, get into the press box, think about what you did, have a look at the game, refresh and come back and try again later. And yeah, I mean, it's also personalities. It's also, there's just different ways to handle these guys. So I can completely understand when, a fan base looks at a certain player getting benched like Pierre Engvall, and then you look at somebody else who I guess we'll just take another example out of this conversation, Kyle Palmieri, or, somebody else who's
or Cal,
not
like we
produced.
talked about.
Yeah, a guy Cal making a bad play. These guys are going to be handled in different ways. And in certain situations, Lane's going to be like, it's not going to get me anywhere if I bench this guy. That's not going to do anything. And that might be because he's too important to be in the lineup or just for another reason, a veteran, a leader, whatever it is. So, yes, very long-winded answer to your question. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Trotty at 19 says, Riley is looking like a keeper. Who sits when Pelech and Pulock are back?
Again, I have no idea when Pulock is coming back. He has
Doesn't sound like soon.
Still not skated yet,
Yeah.
which is a major issue. Now the question is, when Pelech comes back, what happens? We had talked with the acquisition of Riley Bortuzzo, Aho got healthy. The Islanders' defensive depth was so much stronger than it was earlier in the year. Mm-hmm. But lately, Mayfield being back has struggled. Sebastian Aho has struggled. Bolduc has struggled. It went from a lot of defensive options to who hasn't been as bad.
Right.
Again, I hate to say it like that, but really you're at the point where, okay, if Pelech comes back, I don't think you're separating Romanov and Dobson like ever again. I just think if you could have those guys together for 8, 9, 10 years, let them build up, like with Pelech and Pulock, let them build up that chemistry. Right. So, okay, Pelech's a left. So Pelech play with Mayfield, maybe, and then it's Riley staying in this lineup. He's earned it. So now is Aho going to be on the right side? Would Bolduc be able to play the right side? Does Mayfield come out? I mean, now you have issues because now you have to make sure you have the right people in the lineup in terms of, left defenseman and a right defenseman. And Aho could play both sides, which gives him probably a leg up on a guy like Bolduc, but Pelech's going to play. So now it's between Mayfield. I think Mayfield would stay in the lineup because of his contract. I think then it's, okay, does Aho stay in?
Also because Lane trusts him.
Yeah. So does Aho stay in or does Bolduc go to his offside? And again, we saw
I don't
that.
think there's a chance in hell Bolduc goes to his offside.
But we saw Aho come out.
He has a hard enough time on his strong side.
But we saw how they thought about how Aho came out and Bolduc stayed in. There's something there with that.
Right.
Lane likes what he's seen enough to do that.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting.
No, I'm glad this came up because I just wanted to talk about the D in general and kind of hone in on these points here. Is that they went from that depth situation to kind of like, all right, who's performing decently now, right? And you look at this last stretch of games here, and you're still seeing missed assignments. Bolduc on that, what was that, the 2-1 goal, I think it was, for Vegas, where
that guy that tried to, not the guy that hit Martin, the other guy.
Well, Bolduc, no, this is the play where Bolduc was basically shadowing Stevenson behind the net, and Stevenson goes all the way around, and Bolduc releases to help Mayfield out with whoever Mayfield was covering on the other side. So Stevenson gets a free pass to, just below the dots in the circle. He's wide open. The puck ends up on his stick. He's the guy who makes the feed for the goal. And for the life of me, I don't know why Bolduc released off of him. He just gave him a free pass. But these are the sorts of plays that some of these guys are making in crucial parts of these games where the Islanders are paying for it.
And that's where Mayfield allowed the pass to go through his legs at the back post. Talking about the tapping, right? Holmstrom and everything that went wrong in that sequence went wrong. But Holmstrom and Bolduc were behind the net guarding nobody. And that, again, and Lane even said after the game, like, that's a mistake that just can't happen. He didn't call it a single player, but he said, on that play, mistake can happen. He looked at the one with goal interference and goes, on that one, he kept him to the outside, but that shouldn't have counted anyway. So he kind of excludes that again.
Right.
Kolesar at 5-on-5 can't be left wide open in front. So again, clearly a defensive mistake was there. But yeah, now you're getting to the point where it's who hasn't been as bad.
Right.
And that's an issue.
And I know I've been a little tougher on Bolduc lately. I know I keep kind of saying he's my guy to comment. Like, whenever the question comes up, and when everybody's healthy, who's coming out? And I'm like, Bolduc. And I think he's been doing some good things. I think that he has been making some good plays. More on the offensive side of the puck. But, like, he made a great...
Coyotes, the back check.
Yeah, that, but he also made a great pass to the blue line. What was it, Pajot or Cizikas?
Yeah.
Was that the Cizikas play? Whoever it was.
Yeah.
Great look, excellent pass right at the blue line, springs him for a breakaway. Doesn't end up in a goal, but he has that vision.
Is that when Cizikas lost the puck on that breakaway?
I think it was.
Yeah, great. That's a great pass. And that's what he did so well last year in that first stint, is that his outlet, that's what Lane talked about, is that he's a physical guy, but his awareness and ability to make that outlet pass and that transitional play is key. That's what he's good at. And we haven't seen that enough. But once it's all a confidence thing, and he's played better as of late compared to where he was earlier. And that's just because he's getting a lot of playing time. But it'll be so interesting to see what happens.
The thing about Bolduc is he's not a complete disaster out there. You know what I mean? It's not like he goes out there and he's just making mistakes up, down, left, and right. But unfortunately, when he does, make some kind of blunder, it's noticeable. And it's a play that probably, anybody watching can look at that and say, all right, that shouldn't have happened. And that's the issue with him so far. And you talked about Romanov earlier, where he's sliding a little bit too much. If he stays on his feet, he has much more of an ability to make a play, watch the puck, and once you slide, you're out of the play, right? So the D just kind of has to pick it up completely. But that's been something for this team this entire season.
Even when healthy.
Yeah, exactly. So, getting Pelech back soon will obviously help tremendously. And hopefully just overall they can clean it up.
Next up from DTMR 0729. What's with Engvall regularly losing the puck after the stick handling down the ice? Once he goes to pass or shoot, he loses the puck.
So he's had some plays where he's on the puck and then he goes to make like a Matt Barzal kind of edge work play. And like you said, he doesn't have the same edge work that Barzal has, and the puck ends up basically trailing off his stick. I'm sure that's kind of what you're talking about here. And yeah, it happens from time to time because he tries. Now, is he successful sometimes? Yes, he is. But there has been some noticeable times where he kind of gets in his own way. It's almost like he's thinking too much, right? And he makes one move too many, where he should have dished the puck. He hangs on for a little too long. It goes off his stick. I
don't want to say it's soft or cocky, but it kind of thinks like he believes he can make the play. And it's just a little too slow, and teams are going to eat that up. And again, when the Islanders' defense has struggled the way it has, just giving them the opponents just more time in the D zone is not a way to earn trust. I think that's the biggest issue.
Yeah. Next up from CGS 878. How long can Lane start Sorokin until he needs a rest and Appleby gets a game?
Forever. No, because you have to look at it this way. Appleby,
it's a long time.
Appleby played in the NHL in 2017-2018. He played 3 games with the Devils. Then he goes down to the ECHL, and this year is his first year back in the AHL. And his numbers aren't great, but clearly there was more faith in Appleby than there was in Skarek. But at the same time, Sorokin, a little tired, is still light years better than a lot of goalies in this league to begin with. Again, let alone a guy like Appleby. To me, if the game got out of hand against Vegas, just to know if Appleby could make a save.
Sure.
I thought, okay, if they go into the third period down 5-2 or whatever it was, it doesn't matter at this point. You're probably not coming back. Let Appleby face some shots, because then you have to see, okay, if he makes 8 saves and allows no goals, at least if you think Sorokin comes to Lane and goes, listen, I can't play that back-to-back Minnesota-Winnipeg, like, okay, we at least have trust that Appleby could hold his own. In practice, you're watching Appleby, and he does get lit up in practice. Now, again, that's no defense, really. Guys coming down and just being able to shoot, but we don't know what Appleby can be in a game. And I think that's the question mark with how tight the division and how many points are needed. At the end of the day, again, maybe Sorokin hasn't helped the cause as much as last year, but at the end of the day, Sorokin has that ability that proven recently that he could do that. And I just don't think the Islanders are going to go to Appleby unless Sorokin got hurt.
Yeah, not to take a dig at Appleby, but he's essentially a rostered salaried e-bug at this point. I mean, he's sitting on that bench in the event something happens to Ilya Sorokin.
That's it.
That's pretty much the only reason why he's there. And he'll be there until either Varlamov comes back or they find somebody else they can pick up to take his place. Because as Stefen just said, he's not exactly in the right position to step into an NHL game with all that lack of time out there to be somebody that the Islanders can rely on.
And what I will say before we get to the next question is that Varlamov stayed on the trip. Now, again, to me, if he had a major injury, they're flying him home. Again, but you could tweak something and be out 4 to 6 weeks, and it's not major. But hopefully they're practicing tomorrow. We'll find out. Maybe Pellick's back in the lineup. Maybe Pulak skates. Maybe Varley's there. So we'll find out. But yeah, I think it's the Sorokin show unless he gets hurt.
Next up from Mr. Tom Boyle. He says, heard the contract talks are going nowhere with Jake Gensel. First, if he hits the free agency, how much money is he asking for? And do the Islanders have enough cap to sign him?
He's going to be I don't think he's going to get traded at the deadline. I think it would be a situation where the Penguins are going to do everything they possibly can to bring him back. He's so talented, and if not, he's going to walk. Now the cap's going up exponentially, so he could ask for more money. He's been very good year after year. The guy could score. Do the Islanders have the cap space to bring in a guy like that? No. No, they don't.
Not a current.
And again, there was talks about, well, can the Islanders get him at the deadline? Gensel's going to cost a lot. There is no way, especially if the Penguins are fighting for a playoff spot at the deadline, they're not trading Gensel, but two, even if they're maybe willing to move him, they're not trading him to the Islanders. And if they are, it's going to cost. The Islanders can't even afford what the asking price would be. So I don't think Gensel will be an Islander. Now, you look at that line, a Gensel, Horvat, Barzal line, that's probably a dream line.
Sure.
But yeah, he's gonna ask for as much money as humanly possible, and the Islanders don't have it. Nor do I think sure, they would love a guy like that, but right now I think for the Islanders, it's defense right now.
Yeah, it's a nice thought, and I like T-Boyle's always looking ahead, seeing who the Islanders might be able to grab, down the road. But yeah, I think just with cap situations and even just it's definitely not in season. Pittsburgh would have to fall off a cliff if they're competing. They're not trading anybody away from the team, and you get to the summer and. The Islanders would have to move a lot of mountains just to make room for him, and I don't see that happening.
It would probably start with a 9. He's been that good. Maybe 8.5, 9.
Yeah.
Next up from aisle 72, the middle six. Stefen, you mentioned this a bit earlier. The middle six has been awful lately. How does Lou/Lane fix it?
I think this is a situation where they got to figure it out. One, again, maybe Parise. That would be the only thing I see is if Parise comes back and goes in on that third line. Maybe Gauthier goes to the fourth line, or maybe Gauthier. I think they should try Gauthier on the second line with Nelson, because again, Engvall and Gauthier they have speed, and I think maybe Gauthier clearly has a lot of confidence. He turns the puck over a lot, but at the same time, he keeps it simple. The problem with Gauthier, he's a dump and chase guy.
Right.
That's not really what that second line needs. Now again, if the second line struggles though, there might be movement, but the Islanders don't have the assets to go. I don't know what they would need to go get, because it's more than one player having an issue, and you can't fix one issue with just one player. And they're not going to, obviously they have Engvall signed long term. I just don't think they're going to, it's the players at this point have to just they've proven they could do it. So figure it out.
Agreed.
Next up, another one from DTMR 0729. Where has the hitting gone?
Well, when you don't have the puck and you're chasing, that's usually when you try to lay hits. But when we saw it last night, a couple of hits where they just missed. Zizekas missed one, Engvall missed one. But I think for the Islanders right now is when their offense is going, like Coyotes game, where were the hits? They didn't need to.
Sure. And you also had a piece recently on Romanov saying that he's trying to be more responsible, dialing his hitting back. He's not trying to hit everything that moves that comes into the zone, right?
Yeah, no, appreciate that.
Sure.
But yeah, I think hitting's important.
I don't know the difference between an adjective and a verb.
Yeah, hitting's important, but too when you think about forward checking too, I'm not concerned about the lack of hits. It's more like stick placement. You're hitting someone to take them out of the play, but if you're also lifting sticks or boxing out, like that all does the job. I don't think, again, this league, in theory, the hits have gone down anyway. I just think there's games like Arizona where the Islanders didn't have to hit to win the games. And against teams like Colorado where they're flying around, the Islanders can't catch them. If you can't catch them, you're not laying hits.
Yeah, we're not sure if I don't think he even mentioned the Islanders in general. I think it was a general.
Oh, just to the leagues.
Yeah, maybe.
I think
he didn't mention the Islanders.
I think
I think it was interesting you brought that. I didn't even think till you said, in the league in general. I think it's died down, but yeah.
I think it's such a speed skill game that you have to be able to catch. Like, it would have to be like Connor Bedard, head down in the D zone. Like, there's just too much finesse where if you go to hit someone, you miss, your team's at a major disadvantage, whether it's an odd man rush the other way or just defensive zone mistakes.
That, and I think in another element, it's also just players have to be very cautious about how and when they hit now, because they're obviously trying to get these, clock cleaning hits out of the game, as far as hits to the head and hits from behind. And, there's a lot of instances where players have to check themselves and maybe they're lining themselves up for what might be a clean hit, but not only do they have to think about whether they're going to get called, whether they're going to get thrown out, whether they're going to get a suspension, they also have to think about whether they're going to have to answer the bell for giving a guy a clean hit, because that's what the league's turned into. We've talked about that a lot now on this show, where you lay a guy out and you may have to throw your gloves down and then sit in the box for 5 minutes, and it's probably not worth it.
No, that's a great point.
Yeah. Another one from aisle 72. I have a bet with a friend that thinks the whole fourth line will be back next season. I think Clutter and Martin will not be. What do you think?
I think that's a great question, because if there's any long time listeners in this show, I'm pretty sure I'm now like 3 or 4 years into saying this is probably the last year we're going to see the fourth line together, and they keep bringing them back. But I'm going to say it one more time. I think this is the last time we see the fourth line together, and I just think we're already seeing signs of that with Matt Martin being healthy scratched. But
he's back in now.
He is back in right now, but I don't think it's something that they were as eager to do in years past. I think they're finally seeing that, maybe there's some other guys in this lineup that can contribute in different ways on that line, where it's not such a bad thing to put Matt Martin in the press box, right? And you talk about the salary cap issues, those concerns. Now, if those guys, I think they're both UFAs this summer, right?
Yep.
The two of them,
Clutterbuck
right?
and Martin, yeah.
Yeah, so if they both come back, it's going to be on team-friendly deals. It's going to be on twilight of your career sorts of deals, absolutely. Now, would I necessarily be surprised if they were both part of the team next year?
I was going to say the same thing, yeah.
That wouldn't exactly surprise me. We know how much this team values their veterans and their leaders. Ross Johnson's a guy they brought back, and he barely touched the ice, right? And he was on the team for nearly a decade. And Matt Martin and Cal Clutterbuck are two guys that this team values tremendously. And I think if those are guys that they still want to have in the locker room, they'll probably try to find a way to be there next year if there's room for them. As far as the line goes, that I think is finally done,
With Gauthier and Fasching under contract, that changes things for me. If they were on 1 year deals, they're both on, Gaudier's here next year, Fasching's here next year. So that could be a line.
I think that should be a line.
Yeah.
I think Cizikas between Fasching and Gauthier would be a great fourth line.
Yep.
Last one we have is any update on Zach Parise?
No update. I know Lou spoke in Carolina and said there's still talks for sure. Now, I think if he's going to come back, no joke, I think they pick him up in Minnesota. Like, I really do. I think that's actually it obviously makes sense. Efficiency. Pick him up in Minnesota and bring him back.
So they don't have to pay for the flight.
They're going to be there anyway. Let him practice on the trip and then come home. I think that was when I think if he's not on the team by then, I don't know. I think you're getting to a point where, doesn't he want to get into a rhythm? If he's going to come back, he doesn't want to come back in March, right? To have 1 month to play.
And like I said, who knows if he steps right into the lineup?
And you got to think that this is it for him if he comes back. So if this is going to be his last year, you think he wants to play at least a couple of months. So I think if he's not back, like on that trip, I don't know if he's coming back.
Yeah, I don't have like an internal deadline on it, but I still think he comes in one way, shape, or form at one point or another, as long as they don't fall off a cliff in the standings. As long as they maintain their competitiveness in the standings, I think eventually he comes over. And maybe, Lou's just waiting for one of those special IR situations to wedge him in a little easier than have to worry about, waving a guy, and what have you. Because, he's been very good with, plugging guys in and out when it's convenient. And I'm sure he's waiting for an opportunity to bring Zach in when it won't shuffle the deck too much.
Yeah, that was the last one we have, actually, for tonight.
Well, then that'll do it for Questions Brewing. So, folks, it's time to wrap it up. Hit that music, Ed. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you all for tuning in to Hockey Night in New York at twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY. Want to send a huge thanks to David Alter of the Hockey News covering the Maple Leafs, giving us a great spot here tonight. And, of course, want to send a big thanks to our wonderful sponsors, starting with Blue Line Deli and Bagels, located at 719 West Jericho Turnpike in Huntington and 317 Carlton Avenue in Carl Place. Check out the menu, order online at BlueLineDeli.com. Also, send out a big thanks to Main Street Board Game Cafe, located at 307 Main Street in Huntington Village. Find out how to unplug your game at MainSTBoardGameCafe.com. And also a big thanks to Razor and Kniff, attorneys at law. Nobody likes going to court, but hey, if you have to, Razor and Kniff are ready to fight for you. Just call 516-742-7600 for a free consultation. And of course, a big thanks to our pal here, Jay Belsky, who has been sleeping for the last 45 minutes.
He says thank you.
Here at Floored Media, doing a wonderful job here in Rockville Center. Thank you so much, buddy. So, Stefen, where can everybody find you on the internet?
At Stefen_Rosner on Twitter or X or whatever you call it these days. STEFEN_ROSNER. I actually put in my thing STF-IN. So pronunciation shouldn't be an issue.
I did notice that. Yeah. You're very big on making sure everybody knows exactly how to say your name.
I might as well help people out. The spelling's not easy enough.
But dude, I mean, my name is SEAN. I don't have, dude, it's not seen. It's Shaun.
Shaun. I'm calling you Shaun Cuthbert. Where can we find you?
You can find me at Shawnee Hockey. You can follow the show, excuse me, at Hockey Night NY on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You can also follow our website at HockeyNightNY.com. What else? Let's see. Rate, review, and subscribe. Tell your friends. Spread the word. And what else, Stefen? I don't know. I think that's it, right?
All right. Hockey News.
Yeah, man.
Site. Hockey News Ranger site.
NHL.com.
Hockey News Ranger site.
Oh, yeah. We got to mention that.
We'll talk about that next week. And NHL.com. Thanks so much, guys.
There you go. Thanks for tuning in. And we'll be back next week. So we'll see you then.